first found this film, I was just like, and there's still certain parts that like bring me to tears when I see stuff in it. I'm like, oh, ooh, oh. You can read this as well. Just some interesting information in terms of race and ethnicity. So this is what the federal government in the United States uses to identify people. And we just talked in class about household consistencies or relevance to some of the things that the federal government uses as a marker. Also, watch this other together, race the power of leadership. We talked a little bit about these 10 concepts around race. So, those. Thank you. Thank you.
So you go around this area?
Yeah, kind of. On West St. Paul's, St. Paul area.
So is it like 20 minutes away?
Yeah.
Does it take you a half hour to get here?
About 20 minutes.
Alright.
So it's not bad at all. Did you grow up near Marshall?
Do you know where Libby is? Wilmer?
I know where Wilmer is.
Okay. 20 miles south of there.
Okay.
That was pretty much a straight shot for me. Like,
Yeah,
this is
how long
what,
did it take?
almost 2 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was pretty much a straight shot. See what it's right now. What is it right now? I-94 kind of.
494 is
494. Okay. Well, 212 is pretty much.
just down a little bit.
So like with you, like I know like if a kid was struggling out there where I live, like it's more rural, you know, like less people. Like we have our towns are like full of them or 1,000 or 2. Like when they put you when like there's a student in your class when they put you somebody like in a program though. Like you know what I mean? Like they would like out there like they didn't identify them like right away. Or was it like kinda like similar in the city kind of here? Like over there kinda like all
It's, I have really no knowledge of that, but I would assume there's a lot of programs in place. I know that working in school.
okay, like that's why I care about the movies, like where are the programs.
There are,
Okay.
but, you know, some of them are hard to access. I know that.
Okay, so that's what you think kind of happened here.
It was just a shame that they had to shut it down halfway through.
Right.
You could see the change in the kids, how much they were benefiting from it. That's
Well, right, and like they said there's a war at some point down there, well, like in their environment right now, not with them right now.
that's what they were saying. Did you hear the kids arguing this?
Yeah,
It's like a war zone for them.
yeah, so it's like, what's the difference?
Yeah. It's tough to see.
All right, oh, sure.
I miss anything in the beginning?
You're just
Not
kind of
really.
hanging out.
We didn't talk about our power plan, we just want to, we don't, we just want to.
No, we're gonna present it.
So if I just read off what we heard.
Read out.
We already have enough.
That's what I was gonna.
Yeah, we're gonna-
No, probably hasn't heard it because they have other stuff to do.
Yeah. I don't have too much to say.
I know.
Go through it.
Honestly, what I got, but
Yeah.
pretty informal anyway.
Are you here visiting?
Yeah, he let me to.
Are you thinking about going to school here? Is that
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Welcome. It's a good class to sit on. It's a small class.
Yeah.
Usually it's a little bigger. Have you sat in on any other ones?
No,
Oh, okay. I'd say this isn't super typical. So.
that's like a little bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually.
I've had, well, I guess I've only got a few classes. But.
I've had like 20, I've had this.
10 to 20.
Yeah. The most I think they cap on that like 20 something.
Yeah.
I've had a few classes this month. It's probably my third really sometime.
Really?
Yeah, it all depends.
This is adaptive.
So thoughts, comments, observations?
One thing I noticed was when the boys went to the school in Africa, it seemed like most of the staff was white. And that surprised me a little bit. I thought there would be a more variety. But then we probably didn't get to see the whole staff. But what we did see, if I'm not mistaken, was predominantly white.
Yeah, especially when administrators, people with titles.
Principal.
Principal, headmaster.
Yeah.
Right. So why is that? Why do you, when you mention that, what do you pick up from that? Or what does that say to you?
It's almost like, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it's almost like, well, the colored boys can't help themselves and their parents can't help them, so we'll have to rescue them. And so the white people come in and intervene and help them be successful because they can't do it by themselves. That's almost the message I read, which may not be the intention. Maybe I'm just totally reading into it too much, but that's almost kind of like black people can't do it for themselves, so we can do it for them or give them the opportunity to, we got to give them the special program or else they can't do anything with their lives. And, that's,
Cool. Do other people see it the same way or a different way?
I'm just talking about what I saw here.
Yeah. No, just.
I see what you're
Yeah.
what you're talking about. I think I don't know if I would probably word it exactly the same way. I probably would say that it may have been more effective to have adults from the community be able to go to Africa as well, along with the youth, because it was very individualistic. It wasn't so much about helping the community. It was about save this one, I guess. And I guess I liked how they talked about, being in Africa and being able to see people, being in a place that's predominantly black or darker skinned people. And what did that mean to them? Even though the youth didn't really pick up on it, at least in the video they didn't show it. So.
I did like how they made it a point to make sure that children were aware that they were special in the sense they were selected. People say, you have the potential, we recognize and we want to give you an opportunity. I do appreciate that the school did try to make sure that they were aware that they had some value because they may not have been able to see that from the circumstances they were coming from. The kid said that, he said they told him I'm smart. I never heard that
When I
before.
first got
When
here.
I first got here, I didn't know I didn't think about being smart. They told me I'm smart. He was on the dean's list. So.
Anyone heard the starfish story? Right. So
all the starfish.
all the starfish on the beach and there are different variations of it, but ultimately the punchline, if you will, is a person picks up a starfish, throws it back in the ocean, and someone says, "Why are you doing that? You won't make a difference." And say, "I make a difference to that one."
Yeah.
Right? And that's a very good story. But given some of the points that you guys kind of just brought up, what might be some critical ways to think about that particular story or that mindset? Because there are organizations and individuals who have that mindset that say, at least we're making a difference to that one. What might be some critical ways we might help them think about that? Or is that story a fine story?
Well, they put the youth back in, they didn't put, but the youth ended up returning back to the same environment with little community change. And so it almost seemed like it was more devastating for them than to have, an idea of what they wanted or who they wanted to be. And because going there, they felt that was going to make them something instead of them making something for where they are or where they are located. And I thought they could have done a better job including the youth in a lot of the decision making when they were in Africa, because then when they returned, they maybe wouldn't have felt so hopeless. They maybe would have been able to be more inspired to be leaders, even though like a few of them kind of picked up on it. It just wasn't fostered.
Okay. So you,
I guess that's a little different. If I'm a mom and I have a child and I live in that neighborhood and 76% African Americans are graduating from high school, there's people getting killed on the street. My son has a chance of going to prison or dying. That's a greater chance than him graduating from high school. I'm not so concerned about whether the people in Africa are white, black, Hispanic. I have a bigger concern. There's a war going on right here in my neighborhood every day. So I'm not so concerned about what color the people are. And even though they didn't get to go back to that school, they got to get outside of that neighborhood and see something different, see a possibility, how my life could be different. And I feel like they didn't have that before they went to Africa.
I agree that you make a good valid point, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't have done what they did. I was just surprised with the focus of the program and the demographic they were targeting, that I was just a little surprised with all the forethought they had that the staff mixture was a little different. It's not, it's still a successful program. They did a great job, and I agree with you that if I was in that situation and I was the dad and, I know that people get killed, yeah, here, take my kid, help them whatever way you can. Definitely, I agree. I was just, from a clinical, critical, looking back, 2020, I was just making a comment that I was surprised. And the other thing that I wanted to say was that I feel for the parents because, and the kids, because they were told this is what's going to happen, and then right before they're ready to go back, they were told that the school was shut down, it's been suspended, and I pick up on what you guys were saying, where I wish that the parents and the children had a little bit of equipping about, yes, this program can give you some hope, but the program is not what's going to save you. You're going to save yourself. And that they were it was maybe positioned that way, that we're going to try to equip you so that you have skills and resources to have a different level of chance or expectations for whatever free life, because we're going to try to equip you to have these other opportunities. And I feel like for some of the families, once the school was shut down, they just gave up. I mean, there was a lot of emotional reactions at the meeting, but when they did the follow-up in the next session, after the follow-up after that, it appeared, we don't have all the information, but it appeared that they were able to find any other alternatives. They could put the kids back in the public school. And I don't know, what choices they had. I don't know what resources were available, but that's just the way it looks from a little bit of information that we were shown.
I think there are more updates to this as well.
Yeah,
Aren't there
there-
a series of?
There's a series of updates.
About
Okay.
that, like,
Yeah.
was one year enough to change a lot? That's what I'm wondering.
You were wondering if 1 year is enough to do what?
To, you know, like they said, the first class, like the vast majority graduated from high school. I wondered with this class if that was a similar,
Probably statistics.
like,
Yeah,
Or
I can look for a
Yeah.
video that does some updates. You can do it on your own.
You know what's
I
so,
think they're on YouTube.
what
That's
was,
where this was.
what was most interesting to me is that, like, they said these youth were selected, but I started just recognizing the most interesting part was seeing, you know, their unique value was so much easier to see in Africa than it was in their communities. Like the music that they played and the way that they conversated and the way they thought about the world was very deep and meaningful. And I guess, I don't know, it's just an observation that in Africa it seemed like they had more of an opportunity to let that part.
Develop and be shown.
Yeah, I think that I already had a lot of it.
Yep.
I just think just being able to experience it, you know, share it.
You guys, what some of your impressions from the film?
Where like the programs, it's like the kids can't, like, they were like wondering where the programs are, like, obvious, it's like, why don't they give more programs? Like, why isn't there more opportunity for the kids? They want to do better. It's not like they don't want to get better. Where are their opportunities in Baltimore?
Mm-hmm.
Seems like the Baltimore public school system is, wow.
What, yeah, and
Wow.
all things considered though, this was 15 years ago, it's 2005, it's 2015, maybe there's been some improvements. So, you know, yeah, so
That's cool.
in terms of what that time captured, and I would say that Baltimore is not a unique, it is not special in how it deals with some of those same problems. I was talking with someone earlier. I was just sharing that. So I worked with the St. Louis Public Schools when I was in Missouri, and so that's been about maybe 17 years ago or something. And I just saw on Facebook that they just got accredited in terms of outside entities approving their curriculum as a certified, bona fide curriculum this year, and they haven't been accredited for 15 years. So no one has approved their curriculum for over 15 years. And so one might wonder, there's a lot of questions that come into mind. So in the 15 years, why hasn't this happened? And since it hasn't happened in 15 years, what does it mean about the educational process? What does it mean? You know, so all these spiral questions come up in terms of maybe that's why the percentages of folks, you know, so lots of questions.
Well, they always said that the one of the he went to the second grade level.
Second grade.
How is that possible that he hasn't been assessed in all this time to
Yeah.
address that?
They were in 7th grade when they went in?
Wow.
I tell you, I worked in Minneapolis Public Schools, and my job was to keep the kids out of being in the special education program. That's what they wanted me to do. They wanted me to teach them social skills so that their behaviors didn't lend to them having to do IEPs for them.
Well, here was the thing. When I taught in school, we had a conflict of interest, because one of the things that we knew was that African Americans and Native Americans and some Hispanic, but mostly African Americans, Native Americans, were disproportionately on IEPs.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a charter school, we made it our mission to take kids off of their IEPs, to make sure that they got the services so that they would not have that stigma of an IEP and that they wouldn't have it for themselves, right? So we could take them off. Well, one of the things we ran into was once we started that process And we were able actually to get kids off because it wasn't a difficult process to do. We could actually get kids off. But the dollars associated with those kids made us question who and how and when do we get kids off their IEP. So the system itself was geared to provide benefits to the school for keeping kids or even adding kids to IEPs. So I did hear something that was interesting, and I don't know if you could see it or hear it or feel it, but there was a lot of anger and hostility. And what do you think was the root of that anger and hostility in the young people in the film, and even in their parents, right? You can also, I don't know if you can see it in their parents as well. What was the root of that? Do you think, in your opinion?
We just lost of hope for what, just like not seeing changes, no, like, you feel like your children have no future,
Loss of hope, and you
Yeah.
feel like your children don't have a future, so there's some anger associated with that.
Well, look what's going on in the community around you that you see every day. Look, I mean, the kids, when they show the kids looking out the window, I mean, they're seeing people being arrested, fights going on, people doing drugs, selling drugs, the police there to arrest people. So it's like it would be really hard to have, to feel happy, to feel joy, to feel, you know what I mean? I could see it makes sense that people would feel sad or angry. I mean, to me, the emotion makes sense for what's going on in the larger community.
So the larger context drives or feeds into or makes or makes sense for how people may choose to respond to it with anger.
I would think so.
Okay.
I would think it would be really hard to
not be angry.
yeah.
Okay.
They don't feel safe, they don't feel secure, they don't feel significant. So, when you start missing those kinds of things, you get angry at life, angry at the world, just in general.
So you're saying get angry at life, get angry at the world, angry because of the environment and context around you. So what's the backside of that angry? So why am I angry? Because angry is a secondary to something that's primary.
I would think that if I was in this circumstance, I would feel helpless. I would feel like I have no control, I can't change what's happening. And
I
so
would feel like nobody was trying to help me.
Nobody's trying to help me.
Nobody cared about me.
Nobody cared about me. What's that?
feel trapped.
Feel trapped.
Yes.
You can't feel safe.
Can't feel safe. But why anger?
Because if you show that you have those other emotions, you'll be weak. And,
Okay, so if you show that you have other emotions, you'll be weak,
and weakness gets preyed upon.
and weakness gets preyed upon. But why anger?
I think anger is a defensive emotion. It is projected outward rather than inward.
Okay, so it's projected outward rather than inward, although most of these folks did consume that anger, right?
Yeah.
But why? Why anger? When are you angry?
To get power.
To get power.
Things aren't going right.
When things aren't going right.
Your
For respect.
Your needs are being met. You can't achieve your goals because all behavior is goal directed. So if you can't accomplish your goal, then you cause frustration. You have perhaps mistaken beliefs or unmet expectations.
Powerlessness.
Powerlessness. Do you know when I get angry, when I get mad? When I've been lied to. And when I'm consistently lied to. Is life supposed to be like these people are experiencing it?
No.
No, it's not supposed to be like that, right? That's not that's not the fairy tales that we hear. That's not the stories that they put on TV. That's not the reality. So when I see stuff that is a lie and I'm experiencing something totally different, What's one way that I can respond to that? I get angry and pissed off about it. The other part is sometimes it gets so overwhelming that I resign myself to, well, this is just how it is.
Depression.
Apathy.
Right? So I get apathy, and I acquiesce to that, right? So that's another thing. And so part of, and you know, we've talked about this briefly, but anger is a part of what process?
Grief.
Grief. And what are these people grieving?
Lots of it, yeah.
Their humanity, the loss of their humanity. Racism, poverty, overpopulation of jails, undereducation, poor education, miseducation, all those are robbing people of their perception of their humanity. And so natural response is I'm in the grieving process, right? Unfortunately, folks, that needs to stop. Now, what's worse than So hope is an interesting thing because people said that. And what is hope?
I don't think folks should even be around
Okay.
when you're talking about people like that are in those types of experiences where they lost their humanity.
Why?
Because either it is or it isn't. Hope is something that just is a lie, I guess.
Hope is a lie. Explain that because people talk about that, right? We want to give people hope. We want
It's a
to.
lie.
So say more about that. What do you mean?
Either give people a quality of life or you don't. You don't give people hope. It just doesn't happen.
So what is hope then? How does hope get defined?
Believe that things might get better later.
A belief that things might get better.
I always thought of hope as the possibility of something being different.
Okay. The possibility of something being different.
That things can change.
That things can change.
And I think you have to give people hope. I think without hope, I mean, we've seen some of these kids do better.
Yeah.
They went to Africa, they had that experience, they came back, they did better. To me, that's what hope is.
Mhm.
They went to Africa, they saw a possibility that I could do something better with my life. They saw the possibility that I am smart, that I can make good grades, and then they came back and did it. And I think without having hope, that's, you know, I don't know if it's as easy to do that.
Is there, go ahead, Mark. No. Is there a difference between having hope and giving hope?
Yeah.
What would be the difference between those two?
You can have hope for yourself. You can have hope for your own ideas and the things that you want in the future. But someone cannot give you hope. It's fictive. They can give. They can provide certain things, but that's not hope. That's things.
Having it to me comes from inside, giving it is external. But for me, that's what this started. It started with someone coming and saying, hey, look, we have this possibility. If you go to Africa, to the Baraka school, that was someone giving it to them. And eventually it became, it evolved into something that they had in them to do better.
So there's something that I noticed is that there were people who were given hope, and there were boys who had hope, right? So for example, Richard and Romesh, they were given hope.
They believed the program was going to.
They believed that the solution for their problem was outside of them. Where, what was the talk? Montre and Devon internalized and said, I have hope. Nobody's given it to me, right? So one of the things that we have to remember as practitioners is that we can't give anybody hope, but we can give them skills that they can create the hope for themselves. Right? Because the worst thing than having hope and not being able to reach it is to give someone a false hope. Right? To make promises that we can't keep. Politicians, right? to not be able to, the biggest problem with the Baraka School was that they did not follow through. They didn't have a plan for following through. They had a program for 7 years that had been successful. Here they are in their 8th year. They're running on on momentum, but they did not have a follow through plan. And so my thing, I think is worse to give people experiences that they can't use or have containers for that new knowledge and experience. I'm not saying don't give people experiences, but we have to be mindful of the kinds of things and promises that we make to folks, because that becomes really important. I thought it was interesting that for Romesh and Richard, things were relatively black and white, right? Because they came from a context that was relatively black and white. Their mom said, don't make one a king and don't make the other a killer. Just really black and white. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but it became very clear, at least early on to me, that Richard had some learning difficulties. Where do you think his learning difficulties may have come from?
He's the youngest.
No, Richard was the oldest. Yeah.
Well, the school, I mean, I'm sure had these deficits as a child, and there were no interventions. Nothing.
But who usually steps in to make sure those interventions happen? Parents.
So mom probably has a disability.
Mom probably also has a disability, and I don't know if you can see it in her the way she would when complex things they were talking about, and she just kind of had a blank look, like what's really, can somebody decipher this for me? Blah blah blah. So in some senses, those kids needed somebody that could be an advocate for them, and they didn't have that, right? Who did Devon have as an advocate? We had grandma and the pastor and the blah blah blah. So in some way, whether we necessarily agree with how he turned out in terms of this film, but he had a support network that, whether he went to Baraka School or not, was going to make sure that he had some significance, some belonging, and some safety, right? Montre, as much as his grandmother was riding him and joking with him, it was very clear that she cared. She cared, and she was going to, because she had some resources to be able to. He mentioned his mother. We never saw. I don't think we saw his mother in the video, but he mentioned his mother being around. So he has this network. But it didn't necessarily appear that Richard and his brother had that same kind of network. It's very interesting that Richard and his brother have different last names, which is significant, right? That one of the fathers was in jail when he went to visit him. Didn't mention the other boy, right? And it looked like there's some other children in the household as well, so they weren't mentioned. So all of those things become important factors in the growth and development of young people. And so in terms of what you saw, I prefaced this whole film with the do's and don'ts. And so what were some of the things that you saw that would be do's in terms of being a practitioner, that would be a good thing to do in the film?
I think connecting them with nature.
Okay, so connecting them with nature, right? So getting them back out into the natural world.
On that theme, like you said, giving them different experiences, put them in different environments so that they have something to have a contrast to compare their environment of origin to. so they can be, so they know and have experience that there's not just one way to do things or be. But exactly like you said, you need to be able to equip them to know how to process that and be able to have some kind of application, be able to utilize that experience in their lives.
Okay, Andrew. What were some do's?
Like in my own practice.
Or what are some things that you saw that they did well with this program?
I mean, just targeting people who really need help. That was good. If you think about most study abroad programs, probably for pretty privileged kids. So that's a really cool part.
Yeah.
That they actually went to really impoverished kids.
And isn't that interesting, right? So the people who don't necessarily need it or can afford to do it, do those study abroad programs, but it would certainly be just as beneficial, if not more in some ways, to have people who don't have the opportunity to do those study abroad programs do the study abroad programs, right? That's interesting, and I hadn't thought about that. Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead.
I like how the dues that I saw was they helped the kids become like goal orientated. Like, what's your goal of graduate high school? They would do that with little things that I saw in film, the climbing the mountain, putting up the tent together, working together was a goal. I thought that was effective.
The tent when they were fighting and they were like, well, it's gonna get dark and you're gonna be sleeping out here without a tent. You don't get going. It's natural, kind of logical consequence of,
Yeah.
I liked when the principal, when Montre was upset and fighting, how she walked with them and she was calm and there was no yelling, and it just seemed like they gave him enough time to calm down. And I just like the way they interacted with him when he grew up.
Yeah. And in the talking with him, trying to calm him down, there wasn't the
talking down
to thing, right? That can oftentimes happen when we're trying to de-escalate someone. They were just very even keel. I thought it was interesting, at least for me, how was it Miss Jackson? Miss Jackson. She met the kids at the level of intensity that they were presenting to her, right? So she the recruiter, right? So she met them with the same. It was a different kind of energy, but the same intensity, which I think is important. Which is why, well, I guess I'll ask the question. I don't know if you've been in schools or worked with liaison folks, but it seems to me that deans and paraprofessionals typically are people of color. Has anyone else noticed that? You're a para. Yeah. Okay. The rest of your paras, what do they?
And at my school, they're white.
Okay.
Mostly white.
Okay. And your clientele is?
Autistic children.
Autistic children. All right. And mostly?
There's white kids. There's black kids.
Okay.
There's Hispanic kids.
Okay.
Wide range.
Okay. Cool. In my experience, deans or folks who are dealing with behaviors have been typically people of color.
School I worked at was about 50, well no, probably about like 60-40, I guess.
Okay.
Like, well, there was some pairs that were mostly white actually, a few black and a few Asian.
Okay. So maybe my relationship to that may just be my experience. But I have heard white colleagues say they being kids of color, will listen to you before they'll listen to me. Or they'll do for you because you're a person of color, because you don't play. But words like that get used as a part of that thing. So I just think that's interesting.
One thing about Ms. Jackson too is that I really appreciated that after the program was decommissioned, she went to follow up to try to intervene more with the kids to try and give them other opportunities. This is other school, has a good auto mechanics program or car program, whatever. You could do really well at this, So I really appreciate that that at least someone tried to follow up with the kids.
Yeah, they did a poor job after this got canceled. Like, and they said, "You're on your own. Go back to your," And I appreciate that she did it, but it's kind of like by that time he had already. It was too little, it was too late, and he had already. He was sitting there saying, "I don't want to do no work. Don't send me to no school with no work."
And I thought it was funny that she didn't even challenge him and say, "That's interesting because just last year you were committed to doing work. So now you're saying you don't want to. You're conflicting, That's what I would have hit on right away."
Last year, his hope was in the program, not himself.
But that's what I would have cleared the air for him and helped him see, you are interested in schoolwork. It's just this environment is catching you up,
Yeah.
How can you bring back those memories and feelings of where you were at that point?
He was the one on the video who said, "I'm gonna keep trying until I
Like,
die."
yeah,
It happens,
Right.
I mean, he was the one that said, so that was a different kid.
but he was telling her the same thing, just on a different context. He's like, "I'm not now." He's
Right.
going to the other extreme.
Right.
So one of the takeaways for me in terms of the don'ts is don't let your clients depend on you as their savior.
Yeah.
You can't save them. Our job is to give them tools, create the cognitive dissonance so that they can make better decisions for themselves, right? And so the cultural context here was pretty assaultive in terms of their humanity. Like, I can't imagine, I lived in some neighborhoods that were sometimes questionable, but I can't imagine living in that particular time in that particular place with those particular parents, right? I mean, what do you do when you have a parent who can't advocate for themselves, nonetheless advocate for you? And I would say that would even spur another level of anger because you're supposed to protect me and you can't protect me. So what are you doing as a parent, right? I mean, I can see all these levels of anger and hostility and broken promises with broken lives and all that kind of stuff. So for me, that was a big takeaway, which I was, yeah. So I like using this film. I'd encourage you. There is some data for background information and statistics about the time in which this film was made. If you haven't read it, feel free to do so. I find this to be a useful tool for obvious reasons. So, anything else about the film? And then I want to move into our presentations or our presentation.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, cool. So I can open it up on in my Google. Is that correct? Gmail. Okay, I have to log out of this one. What did we title that?
Cultural.
I'm looking for it.
Are you on your Google Drive?
I'm not on Google Drive. I'm in my, I'll go to Google Drive.
Because if you open that, then it should be on your right-hand side if you looked at it recently. I know he was awesome. That's what I was saying. It was like he was the way for the shining. So it like bring something to Africa. You know, how proud could you be to be able to share something like that? I was proud of you. And he just like, this is another day. But that's too, when we had that conversation with his grandma. She was like, or he's like, yeah, we went to this church. And she said, did you play the drums? And he said, yeah.
It was always heartbreaking when he had to deal with his mom. It's just like, oh.
And then the mom got out.
Yep. I don't.
It's not pulling up on your drive.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Maybe I should. I forgot what I typed in. Sorry.
That's okay.
Actually,
Do you have it on your phone?
Mhm.
Oh, sweet. You want to just send it to me? Send me the link again.
Culture/leadership and mental health.
Culture, leadership, and mental health. Here it is. Great. I'm going to continue. You know what? Can you look at it? It says you have to approve me. I don't know why it's.
I already did.
I know it's goofy.
Did you log in under a different Gmail?
I think I may have.
So which?
Look, it should say AMEO2 at Gmail. Did that come up?
Well, you want me to go to my G? Oh wait, did you send me something requesting?
Nope. It says you need permission. Your request has been sent. You will receive an email if and when the owner of this item approves your request.
So the one I approved was your last name, or yeah, your last name went backwards.
Yeah.
So you want me to do a different one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I don't know why they were supposed to be linked, but it's my last name backwards for 2. in front of that.
Well, do technical difficulty, we don't go down.
Yes. No. We're almost done. So while I'm waiting for this to approve me,
I guess I don't have it on my phone, so I have to download it.
culture.
Can one of us just log in and do it?
Yeah.
And
Or go to your other account. Where you are.
or if you could do that, because I can't get in.
Can one of us others do it? Because we're not the owner, it's your account, it's your,
You can all pull it up.
we can pull up, but
Yeah, I
can we
just-
approve?
Um,
We have to.
Oh, I don't-
we can